This past week, some bad things have happened in France. That's why it's called Living History. Here's some old stuff for us. Bonjour tout le monde and welcome to Turn Back the Clock with Stock number 14. We're going to start this week on November 22nd, 1869. We have the birth of André Gide. Now, he was an author and he won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1947 for, quote, his comprehensive and artistically significant writings in which human problems and conditions have been presented with a fearless love of truth and keen psychological insight, unquote. On November 23rd, 1654, Blaise Pascal, you may remember him from the science edition of National French Week. He has an experience where he believes that he meets the Christian God, and this leads to Pascal's wager, in which he argues that it is in one's own best interest to behave as if God exists, since the possibility of eternal punishment in hell outweighs any advantage of believing otherwise. Now, this was not only groundbreaking in its religious context, but it was also an example of probability theory, an early example of probability theory, and it alludes to but predates existentialism, pragmatism, and volunteerism, all of these isms that would come around later. So Blaise Pascal in 1654. On November 24th in 1864, we have the birth of Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec. Now you have to go all the way back to Turn Back the Clock with Stock number 3. And I talked about Toulouse-Lautrec then. That was his death. But he was an amazing post-impressionist painter, one of my favorites. I really enjoyed him. On November 25th, in 1763, we have the death of Antoine-François Prévost, also known as Abbé Prévost. Now, he followed the order of Benedictine monks, but he was unhappy with his station, what he had been ordered by the Pope to do as a monk. So he sought a different appointment from the Pope. He ultimately went AWOL from the Benedictine order, and he fled to England. He started writing. His most famous novels are Mémoires et Aventures d'un homme de qualité qui s'est retiré du monde. That means the memories and adventures of a man of quality, man of distinction, who has withdrawn from the world. And also Manon Lescaut. Manon Lescaut is very famous. It's been filmed a couple of times. There's an opera that's been based on it. Eventually he was reconciled with the Benedictines. He was appointed another priory, but he continued to write. And there are various beliefs on how he died, but officially he passed away from an aneurysm. On November 26th, 1912, we have the birth of Eugen Ionesco in Slatina, Romania. Now, Ionesco is a remarkable playwright, and he was one of the early authors in the theater of the absurd. The theater of the absurd authors, they wanted to show the insignificance of human existence, and this also incorporated existentialism and just a whole bunch of other things. Other authors in this grouping are Sartre, Camus, and Kafka. Metamorphosis by Kafka is a weird story, but check it out. There are cockroaches in it, so if you don't like cockroaches, you may not want to read it. Ionesco's most famous play is, there goes my camera. Okay. Ionesco's most famous play is called Rhinoceros, in which pretty much all the characters become rhinoceros by the end of the play. Check it out. I like it. It's one of my favorites. On November 27th in 1095, we have the Council of Clermont, and during this council, the Pope at the time, Pope Urban II, gave a speech, and that speech was the starting point of the First Crusade. Also on November 27th, in 1787, Louis XVI, that was the last king of France, he signs the Edict of Toleration, which allowed for Protestant freedom. Now you may remember his grandfather, Louis XIV, he took away Protestant freedom, but Louis XVI reinstated it. And finally, on November 28th, 1958, the country of Chad in Africa declares independence from France. So a lot of French countries took that opportunity to break free of France. So there's your French history for the week. All of my friends in France are okay after the terrorist attacks. It's a very sad time. Please keep up with the news, follow it, see what's going on. So I'll see you next week. Happy Thanksgiving and à bientôt.
Yeah!